I've been a nurse for 14 years, 12 of those on night shifts. I used to joke that I'd forgotten what sunlight looked like, but lately, it stopped being funny. Nights have their own kind of silence, the kind that feels too aware of you. I work at St. Mary's Medical Center, a mid-sized hospital near downtown Seattle. The overnight shift runs from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and on paper, it's manageable. Fewer visitors, less chaos, steady routine. In reality, it's an endurance test, caffeine, charting, and the constant hum of machines that sound like breathing. That night, the one I can't stop thinking about, started like any other Thursday. Our floor was quiet, just 6 patients in the medical wing. My usual partner, Rita Martinez, called in sick, so I was covering both wings with Andrew Pike, a new nurse still in his second week. He was good, though cautious, methodical. Around 9:30 p.m., I did my rounds, checked vitals, updated medication sheets, and gave doses as scheduled. Room 214 belonged to a patient named Arthur Mays, 78 years old, congestive heart failure, on his 3rd admission this year. He was polite, quiet, the kind of man who always apologized before pressing the call button. By 11:15 p.m., Arthur was gone. It was peaceful, if death can ever be peaceful. His vitals had been deteriorating all day, and the doctor had warned us. I was with him when his pulse faded out, one slow exhale that didn't come back. I closed his eyes, called time of death, and documented it. 11:14 p.m. Andrew helped me prep the body. We followed protocol: tag, zip, transfer to the cooler until the family arrived in the morning. At 11:45, I returned to finish paperwork. There's a form, the Medication Administration Record, or MAR, where we log every med given, along with patient acknowledgement if they're alert enough to sign. Arthur had signed for his 8 p.m. dose earlier that night. His last signature was neat, slow, with shaky loops. When I glanced at the sheet again, something caught my eye. Under 12 a.m., there was another signature line. Same name, same shaky handwriting. Arthur Mays. I froze. It wasn't there when I left. I knew because I had logged his last dose myself. I checked the clock, 11:56 p.m. No one else had access to that chart except me and Andrew. At first, I assumed it was a clerical glitch. Maybe I'd accidentally duplicated the line, or someone pre-filled it. But the ink looked fresh, still faintly glossy. I looked at the signature again. It was perfect. Too perfect. The same curve in the M, the same hesitation before the S. Like a carbon copy. I called Andrew over. "Did you touch Mr. Mays' chart?" He shook his head, blinking like he wasn't sure why I'd even ask. "No, you had it last, right?" We both stared at the signature, and for a few seconds neither of us spoke. Then Andrew said quietly, "Maybe he signed it earlier, and we just didn't notice." "No," I said. "He didn't." I went to the fridge unit, the body cooler, where we kept deceased patients until transfer. It's a small room down the hall with stainless steel drawers and a flickering motion light that sometimes stays on for no reason. Arthur's bag was on the middle shelf, still zipped, still tagged. For reasons I couldn't justify, I unzipped it halfway and looked inside. He was there, still, cold, unchanged. And yet my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Back at the desk, the ink had dried. I checked the pen, same black ballpoint we used everywhere. I checked surveillance timestamps, but only security could access those. At 1:40 a.m., Andrew went to the cafeteria. I stayed behind, trying to focus on charting. When I turned back to Arthur's file, there was another line added. 2 a.m. dose. Another signature. Same pen. Same name. Same dead man. That's when I called the charge nurse, Megan Liu. She arrived in 5 minutes, her hair still wet from the rain outside. I showed her the sheet. She looked at it, frowning. "You're saying someone forged this?" "I don't know," I said, "but it wasn't me." Megan took the chart to the nurse's station under better light. "This looks identical. Like Xerox identical." We decided to compare it to earlier documents. She pulled Arthur's old admission file from 2 months ago. Different dates, same patient. We found his signatures there too. The same shapes, the same slight smudge after the R. Only one thing stood out. All three signatures, old, new, and the ones after death, were exactly identical down to pixel-perfect alignment. That doesn't happen with handwriting. Ever. At 3 a.m., the hallway lights dimmed automatically, part of the hospital's night mode. The station screens cast a blue glow, reflecting off the linoleum. Megan had gone to check the security office. Andrew was charting vitals 2 rooms away. And then, from the far end of the hall, I heard the unmistakable scratch of a pen. It was faint, rhythmic. Scratch, pause. Scratch, pause. Coming from room 214. I stood up, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed not to move, but my body went anyway. The door was half open. The light inside was off except for the monitor glow. On the bedside table lay Arthur's chart. Open, and a pen, the same cheap ballpoint, was slowly rolling away from it, like someone had just dropped it. The page showed a new line, 3 a.m. dose. Signature, Arthur Mays. I ran. I don't even remember how far. I just know that by the time I reached the station, my vision was narrowing. Megan came back seconds later, saw me shaking, and said, "What happened?" "There's another one," I whispered. "Another signature." She didn't believe me until she saw it herself. When she did, her face drained of color. We went back to room 214 together. The bed was still empty, body removed, sheet folded. The chart sat exactly as before, the pen still on the floor. Megan picked it up, slipped it into a plastic bag like evidence. "Security's checking footage," she said quietly. "If anyone went in there, we'll see it." We didn't see it until morning. The camera facing that corridor had a clear view of every door, including room 214. Between midnight and 4 a.m., no one entered or left. Not a single person. But at 2:59 a.m., the door to room 214 opened slightly, maybe an inch, and then closed again. No shadow, no figure, no visible movement. Just the door breathing. The hospital handled it like they always do, quietly. Security logged it as a technical recording anomaly. The MAR sheet and pen were taken by administration for review, but no follow-up ever came. Megan asked for a transfer a week later. Andrew quit 2 months after that. Me? I stayed. Every night, I still do rounds, fill out charts, initial the doses. I double-check every entry, every signature. And once in a while, when I'm signing a form near 3 a.m., I feel that faint indentation under my hand, like the paper remembers every name that's ever been written on it. Last week, it happened again. Not Arthur this time. A woman from 218, Marcia Connors, declared dead at 10:37 p.m. When I checked her chart before shift end, there it was. 12 a.m., Marcia Connors. Same pen, same handwriting, same dead calm in the air around me. I used to think hospitals were places where life ends. Now I think they're places where records never do. When I tell people I work nights at a hospital in Tokyo, they picture something glossy and high-tech, robots delivering trays, everything sterile and glowing white. That's not Cozy Eye General Hospital. Our building was finished in 1972 and still smells faintly of disinfectant and damp paper. The fluorescent lights buzz like cicadas. Some elevators stick on the 5th floor if you press too fast. But it's steady work, and the pay keeps me in my apartment in Sujinami. My name's Ayako Suda, 33. I'm a senior night nurse in Ward 9, which mostly houses elderly patients with long-term illnesses. There are 4 of us per shift, 2 nurses, 1 aide, and a junior doctor on call. Nights are quiet. We check vitals every 2 hours, update medication charts, then try to stay awake till dawn. I've worked this shift for almost 8 years. It's supposed to be routine, but after what happened last winter, I can't look at a chart without feeling watched. It started with Mr. Takayama, room 912. He was 81, a retired calligrapher. Lung cancer, terminal stage. Despite the tubes and oxygen, he was proud of his handwriting, Beautiful, deliberate kanji that looked carved rather than written. Every night, when I gave his 10 p.m. medication, he insisted on signing the mark sheet himself. He said, "If I can still hold a brush, I can still be me." On February 18th, around 11:40 p.m., his breathing turned erratic. Dr. Nishida pronounced time of death at 11:57. We covered him, closed the blinds, and began paperwork. I remember feeling a strange relief for him. The man had suffered. I logged the death, sealed the medications, and filed his mark sheet in the binder with the others. Everything was correct. At 12:30 a.m., while updating another file, I noticed movement from the corner of my eye, a flicker of paper on the counter. I turned, and Mr. Takayama's chart had slid slightly out of the stack, as if tugged. I ignored it, airflow maybe. When I reached for it an hour later, I froze. Below his last signature, someone had written another line in deep black ink. Gal Shan, Jung Fu, Takayama Masao. The strokes were his, perfectly balanced, bold, as though written by someone alive and concentrating. I checked the timestamp, 1 a.m. dose. But no medication was scheduled, and certainly not for someone deceased. At first, I thought another nurse had filled it in out of habit. But the other nurse, Mina Horikawa, hadn't touched that section. When I showed her, she paled. Maybe he signed earlier, before. She started, then trailed off. We both knew he hadn't. The ink was fresh, the faint, oily sheen still visible. We used standard black Pilot G, 2 pens, same across the ward. I checked mine. It was still in my pocket. We tried to dismiss it. I documented the anomaly and locked the chart cabinet. By 3 a.m., fatigue set in. I made tea in the staff room. Mina had gone to help an aide in 914. When I came back, the cabinet door was slightly ajar. The lock still engaged, but the latch hadn't caught. Inside, the mark sheet was half pulled out again, and another signature line had appeared. 3 a.m., same name. The pen this time wasn't just inked. It had pressed so hard that the paper tore slightly. I remember whispering, "This isn't possible." That's when Dr. Nishida entered. He looked exhausted, mid-yawn. I showed him the sheet. He frowned, skeptical. "You too are overtired. Maybe someone copied it accidentally." But when he compared the handwriting to the earlier ones, his brows furrowed deeper. "This is identical, down to the brush pressure. That can't be done with a pen." We all went to room 912 together. The bed was empty, body already transferred to the morgue. The only sound was the slow beep of the unused monitor. And yet the air felt, I don't know, charged, like after a thunderclap. Around 4 a.m., I sat at the nurse's station updating the logs. I tried not to look at the cabinet, but it felt like a pulse at the edge of my vision. Then came the faint scratch. It's a sound you never forget once you notice. Pen tip against paper. Slow, deliberate, rhythmic. It came from behind the glass window, separating us from the hallway. I stepped out. The corridor lights were on night mode, half-dimmed, shadows stretching long. Room 912's door was slightly open. Inside, the bedside table had the mark sheet laid flat. The pen rested exactly beside it, tip pointing toward the bed. On the sheet, a new entry glistened in fresh ink. For AM, signature, Gal Shan, Jung Fu. But here's the part that makes my chest tighten even now. The signature was wet. The ink hadn't dried. Someone had signed it less than a minute ago. The pen was warm. I took a step back and nearly collided with Mina. She'd followed me in silence. Her face was white, lips trembling. "The cameras," she whispered. "We'll check the cameras. Ward 9 has a corridor camera that faces the patient rooms." We watched the feed in the tiny monitoring room behind the station. Between 3:58 and 4:02 a.m., the footage showed nothing unusual. No staff entered 912. The hallway was empty. But something did happen. At 3:59:46 Mr. Takayama's door eased open about 15 centimeters. Slowly. Then, after 10 seconds, closed again. No hands, No shadow, just the door moving. The timestamp on the Mars sheet said 4 a.m. The administration's explanation was predictable: unauthorized access, possible staff error, malfunctioning door sensor. They sealed the file, reassigned us to another ward for mental recovery. But some things don't leave you. 2 weeks later, I went down to the archive room to retrieve old MAR records for audit. While flipping through last year's binder, I froze. Every chart that had belonged to a deceased patient in Ward 9, not all, but several, had an extra signature added hours after death. Different hands, different ink, but always perfectly aligned with the patient's usual signature. The timestamps? Always between 3 and 4 a.m. No one had ever noticed, because no one compared postmortem sheets. I took one home. I know that's a violation, just one page, to prove to myself it was real. That night, around 2:50 a.m., I left it on my kitchen table. At 3:15, I woke up to a faint scratching sound from the next room. When I turned on the light, the page was still there, but a single black line had appeared below the last entry, like the start of a new signature that had stopped halfway. The pen I'd used for my grocery list was lying beside it. Now I keep that page locked in a drawer, sealed in plastic. I tell myself I'll burn it one day, but I don't. Because some nights, especially around 3 a.m., I hear that same soft rhythm again. Scratch, pause, and I can't decide what's worse, that someone might be forging the dead, or that the dead might still feel obligated to sign their names. My name is Rima Day, and I've been a nurse for nearly 15 years, 12 of them in the night shift. People say the night is calmer in hospitals. They're wrong. It's not calm. It's just quiet enough for your thoughts to echo. I work at St. Bridget's Hospital, a government-run facility near Park Circus. The building is old, with green paint peeling in layers and fans that groan like they've seen too much. Ward C is my responsibility, 12 beds, mostly cardiac and post-surgical cases. Most nights follow a rhythm. Check vitals, distribute meds, sign MAR sheets, and hope no one crashes before dawn. On March 14th last year, I was assigned alone in Ward C. My partner, Arpita's son, had gone on leave for her sister's wedding. The patients were stable. The monitors beeped their usual lullaby. Except for one man, Mr. Ramesh Lad. He was 64, recovering from gallbladder surgery. A diabetic, a chain smoker, and the kind of patient who still cracked jokes while coughing blood. He reminded me of my father, stubbornly alive. At around 11:10 p.m., while checking vitals, his pulse dropped. Just like that. Flatline. We tried. I swear we did. CPR, epinephrine, everything. But by 11:24 p.m., the doctor on duty declared time of death. I cleaned him, closed his eyes, and noted it in the records. 11:24. Then I sat down at the nurse's desk to update his medication sheet, the MAR. He had signed it himself at 8 p.m. for the last antibiotic dose. His handwriting was big and rounded, R. Lot. After documenting the death, I placed the sheet in the file and went back to the ward. The body would be moved to the mortuary in the morning. I don't know what time it was when I first noticed it, maybe midnight. I was cross-checking the binder when my eyes caught an extra line on his sheet. 12 a.m. dose, R. Lot. Fresh signature. Same style. Same angle. I blinked, thinking fatigue had blurred my vision. But no, the ink shimmered faintly in the tube light. I checked the duty register. No one had touched the file after me. I was alone in that section. The ward was silent, except for the fans. For a long minute, I just stared at the page, my throat dry. Then I laughed, a hollow, nervous sound. Maybe I wrote it by mistake, I told myself. Maybe I was distracted, but I knew I hadn't. Around 2 a.m., I went to check on the new admission in 304. When I came back, a file had slid halfway out from the stack. Ramesh's file. The binder clip was open, and another line had appeared. 2 a.m. dose, signature again. Perfectly identical. My hands trembled so badly the paper crinkled. Identical signatures are impossible, not similar, not close, identical. The pen pressure, the shape of the R, the smudge under the H. I compared them with the 8 p.m. signature from when he was alive. They matched, pixel for pixel. There was no logical way for that to happen, unless someone had traced it. I went to the security room to check if anyone had entered Ward C. The guard, an old man named Mukherjee, looked half asleep. He replayed the CCTV footage of the hallway. From midnight to 2:10 a.m., no one had gone in or out. But right at 1:59 a.m., the camera flickered, static for 3 seconds, and during that blackout, a shadow moved past the door window. No figure, no face, just movement. When the feed resumed, the corridor was empty again. The same minute, the new signature appeared on the mark sheet. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Prank, data glitch, maybe someone forging entries. But who would forge a dead man's signature twice in the middle of the night in a half-deserted government hospital? At 3:15 a.m., the ward lights dimmed automatically. The silence was almost physical, heavy, pressing. I went to the nurse's desk, determined to lock the files away until morning. That's when I heard it. A faint, slow scratch sound, like a pen dragging over paper. It was coming from the direction of bed 6. Ramesh's bed. I turned. The sheet over his bed had been removed earlier when the attendants came to prep the body. Now, the mattress was bare. But on the small side table, under the faint yellow night bulb, lay his file. Open. The pen beside it was moving. Not floating, rolling. As if someone had just set it down. I stepped closer, my throat tight. On the page was a new entry. 3 a.m. dose. R lot. Ink still wet. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the file and ran to the duty room. My hands shook as I flipped through every sheet. 3 identical signatures, one after another, like a pulse that refused to stop. I spent the next hour writing my report, explaining what I'd seen. At 5 a.m., I handed it to the morning shift in charge, Sister Anjana Paul. She read it, frowned, and said, "Maybe you're overtired, Rima. These things happen." But when I insisted, she sighed and took the file to verify. Half an hour later, she came back, pale. "All the signatures," she said quietly, "are exactly identical. Even the ink shade is the same." We both knew that wasn't possible. Not unless the same pen, pressure, and hand had made them all. The hospital recorded the event as a clerical irregularity. They said maybe I pre-signed by accident or mixed files. But I know what I saw, what I heard. A month later, I got transferred to the ICU ward. I thought it was punishment. Later, I realized it was protection. Still, the habit remains. I triple-check every mark sheet now, even for living patients. And sometimes, during the slowest hours before dawn, I glance at the paper and find faint impressions beneath the last line. Indentations, as though someone invisible kept writing the same name over and over. Last week, while updating a file at 2:55 a.m., I noticed something new. The pen mark extended slightly below the line, a half-finished letter. R, then nothing. I froze, because that was my section, my handwriting space. My name would have gone there next. I closed the file and left it unfinished. In the morning, the matron asked why I hadn't signed. I just said, "I don't do signatures after midnight anymore."